famously, I always say it took me 10 years to write the first book because I was doing it in and around my corporate job. And the second book took 10 weeks and that's 10 weeks of sitting down and writing the start to the end.
So, Owen, it's brilliant to have you on the podcast. I've known you for a few years, and I'm really excited to share your story and get your insights into this thing called confidence. And I guess that's the first question that we start with our guests. What does confidence mean to you?
I think for me, it's knowing you've got it, as in you've got this, no matter what you're up against. So I don't think it's like knowing that you can do it or knowing that you can do it easily. But whatever situation you find yourself in, you know that you've got it in you, something in you to get you through it. Even if it's not easy, it's just knowing that it's there.
Right, it's interesting. Where's that? What do you mean by knowing? Because I think that's a really interesting. Where's that come from?
Well, it's a sense of, I think a lot of it comes from experience over time of doing, like public speaking is terrifying, I think, for pretty much 99% of the population. You're pretty good at it. I'm okay if I practice. When I started out, when I was doing that public speaking, I was probably up there, heart like a bunny rabbit, going mental inside, and there's a real kind of like panic. But once you do it once, do it again, that knowing, that muscle memory of I can do this reaction I'm having in my body is a natural reaction. The confidence is a sense of, I think it is a bit of muscle memory, psychological memory. It's something in you that goes, you've got this. I can give you another example, is that when I start to write a book, I am absolutely terrified that first chapter, I'm going to go, I can't do this anymore. I don't know how to do this. How did I write the last one? It's terrifying. And I'll sit there and go, I've done it 12 times now, so I've got this. That to me is the confidence that I can write a book, but it doesn't take away the terror.
Interesting. So if you were to cast your mind back to the first book you wrote, where you didn't have that to call back to, how would you describe confidence then, or how did you approach it?
In terms of the writing or just generally?
The writing, I guess. You know, you don't have something to look back on to say, well, I've done this, I can do it.
Oh, it's a good question. Well, I've always written. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always written little stories. I won an adult caption competition as a kid, as a 12-year-old, Horace and Doris. So I've always been able to write stuff. I've always had it in my head that I can, other people would make comment about, well, that's really good, you write really well. So I think that repetition of message, whatever I was putting out, whatever I was creating as a kid, you're creative, you're really good with words, you've really described that well. I think that sort of layers down and sort of builds at that point, a very shallow foundation, but it's enough for me to think I can do this. And I don't think I ever really got the confidence in the story until I had it first sort of looked at by an editor of some nature, someone with a bit of a professional kind of experience to look at it and go, you've got the bones of a really good story here. There's a massive flaw in it because I've written it around American law. So I had to basically rewrite the second half of the book, which was terrifying. But once I'd got past that stage, then the confidence started to flow a little more, which then gets completely destroyed when you try and get an agent and try and get published because nobody replies to you or tells it's rubbish and it's not suitable. So, you kind of get highs and then the massive lows. So it's an ongoing process, I think, with confidence.
Do you think it's vital in that case to have other people around you? So setting off as an author or in any new career, and I think we've all had many career changes through our lives so far. It's vital to have somebody around to say, no, do you think you can do this? Yeah, I think I can do it. Well, go for it. Or do you think that a lot comes from inside?
I think it depends on the individual. I mean, I've always been really determined. I think I've been driven by my demons as much as anything else to prove something. I was bullied as a kid. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad when I was really young. It wasn't a playful family. There was a lot of kind of, quite frightening dark times. I said dark. There was no abuse. There was none of that sort of stuff. But it wasn't. I grew up in an traditional Irish household. There wasn't a lot of fun. So I've always kind of, I don't know, I went into my own head to create stories, to create spaces, to create, I would replay conversations that I'd had again, where I get the upper hand, or I say it better, or I say it differently. So I think for me, there's always been that inner drive to prove something to other people. It's why in my very weird and wonderful background, I ended up broadcasting and becoming a presenter, because I wanted to do something that I thought was really, hard to do and most people couldn't do. And when I actually got in front of the mic and, did it on and off, I never had a full-time gig. I sort of stood in for stuff or did short bursts. Once I got to that point, I didn't really have any interest in being a broadcaster anymore, because it didn't, almost like that flame had been put out, but the flame was still burning for something else. So I think, yes, it certainly helps having people in your corner, because my wife has been absolutely amazing my entire sort of journey from, I started writing this book with her, not with her, but I was with her. 2008, I started writing my first ever proper book. To this day, she's still my biggest cheerleader. Always, you can do it, you've got it. And, your books are genuinely great stories. And she's also my biggest critic. If she sees something that's not right, she'll step in. So I think it's a mixture of self-drive, but if you've got great people, it makes it a lot easier.
I love that self-determination. That I can really resonate with that, where you're not just proving yourself right, you're proving other people not wrong, but you're overcoming things from your childhood as well. I think we do hold on to some negative some thoughts and experiences then to really overcome that later in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's an interesting thing, because you said driven by your demons a bit, which is kind of these experiences. And it's interesting, that can be a real positive or a negative. But is it about learning how to harness that drive for the right thing? Because you obviously said about broadcasting, you did it and it wasn't the thing.
Yeah.
Do those demons still have a factor in the determination you have now in your writing now? In terms of getting something written down, getting it done, pushing yourself through the downs as well as the ups,
Yeah, I think a bit of it is muscle memory. So I've, like I recommend to most people with anyone who's got challenges and stuff that keeps coming up. I moved to Australia for 4 years, and when I was there, I went to therapy, for the first time. And I remember my first New Year's Eve ever in Sydney. We were in this massive tower block, and a friend of mine turned around to me. She was British, and she said, "What are you running away from there?" I went, "What do you mean, what are you running away from?" I'm not running away from anything. She went, "Palms in over here are either they're running away from something or running to something." And I was like, "I'm not running away from anything." 6 months later, I'm sitting there just broken, because all the safety nets around me, all my friend base, everything that I knew and was familiar wasn't there. Obviously, Kim was there, my now wife, but we hadn't been together that long. So the demon, it was like I started to, the stuff that was in me started to come out. So I went and I saw an amazing therapist called Scott in Australia. He's an Arsenal fan. He's an Aussie. We used to talk a lot about football, and I did a lot of work on that, and it really helped me understand where my experiences when I was younger had or how they'd affected me. And I did learn to harness them, a little bit. And I'd done work before that when I was in the UK and working in radio. I did some work with a now defunct company called Top Banana when I was in my early 20s, and it was one of these where you go away for 4 days and you swing from the trees and do, all kinds of amazing, scary things with your workmates. But it was really open up, and they did firewalking and all sorts. And I was suffering from depression at the time when I went, and we did a firewalk. I was talking to someone about this last week, actually. And they said, throw whatever you want to get rid of into the fire and then walk across it and get rid of it. And it was pitch black by the time this fire went. And I went across, I put my depression in, I went across, and I was so pumped that when I got out the other side, I just ran off into this field. And I was screaming, there were all these big yellow rugby tops on. And Mel, who set it up, she still laughs now, but I'm running around like this, just screaming, because it's like I've beaten the depression. And it took 3 of these lads to just tackle me to the ground. It was like I was running down the line with the ball, and there was the pack was coming after, and they got me, and I'm like, "You all right?" And I was just like, "Fucking beat it, I'm beating it," and that was the start of that, getting away from that. Finally taking a step forward, and that was my first intro into you can change things. You don't have to live with what you've been dragging around with you. but there was a lot of shit I was dragging. So that's why that would be 99, I think we did that. So 9 years later, I started therapy in Australia proper. And that was actually from there, probably a 10-year journey, and doing group, all kinds of stuff. And it was just been an amazing experience to learn about myself and then to learn to harness the drive. I don't think the drive ever really goes away. Maybe it will when I'm, if I'm going to make my first million, I've got the yacht and I'm sat there, will I be like, yeah, it's all good now, or is it just, well, what can I do now? Now I've reached this level. What's the next level? I don't know.
We were talking about this before. I think it's that initial realization, because I had some therapy. My mum and dad divorced when I was 10, and I had some which I didn't realize, some real major hang-ups. I had a very close relationship with my dad for like the latter part of his life, but a lot of time where I didn't see him. I'd moved away with another job and everything. So when I had a bit of therapy, and it was probably the best thing that I ever did. And remember, she was fantastic. Basically, Gate said, hard as nails, didn't ask too many questions. And remember, I saying to her, so have you got any addictions? I was like, no. I mean, I said, I like a drink and stuff like that. She said, what about tattoos? I was like, well, okay. She says, how much of your body's covered? I said, well, pretty much all of us. She's like, and it's little things like that just sparked a certain realization. That was just really going back to my childhood, and then I kind of realised why I'd probably been heavily tattooed. It was just,
It's, I've heard that about, tattooing. In fact, I think it was the one of Dan Brown's books. There's a guy, one who counts his tattoos up. He goes through the whole ritual changing, and it's almost like the butterfly, the metamorphosis from the bug into the butterfly and changing who you are. And that, that struck me. I was just like, God, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So just to that journey of the sort of the self, can you put it in context of the journey you went through in the profession? Because I think there was obviously some key stages there that led to you becoming a writer. What was that journey professionally through that?
Well, bizarrely, I trained in the late 90s graduated as a graphic designer, and it was, I think it was one of the recessions. I can't remember which one it was. One of the big Tory recessions, and we were all coming out bright and bushy-tailed and couldn't really get work. And I ended up doing a job in Yorkshire in house for a company that still makes people laugh now. And I always get J.R. Hartley. They used to manufacture and sell fly fishing equipment. I got one of the best design schools I was in Newcastle, right, and Northumbria, and at the time it was Central St Martin's, Northumbria, and Glasgow. I think were like considered the top three. There's probably people now screaming at me going, "No, they weren't," but they were in my mind at the time. That's my memory of it. And so I'd gone to one of the best schools, and all of a sudden I'm in this horrible little office in a terrace house in a small village outside Rotherham, and I was just like, "What am I doing? Why am I doing this?" And then I heard this ad on the radio, and it was around Diana dying, because I remember listening to Radio 1, and I moved over to what at the time was Kiss Radio, and they were looking for copywriters, someone to write radio commercials. It just sounded like everything I wasn't doing, and I thought, give it a go. And I applied for the job, got it, and to this day, it always makes me laugh. My boss at the time, when I got the job, turned around and said, "The reason you didn't get the job, the reason you got the job," was like, "Yeah," he goes, "You weren't a wanker." I went, "What?" He goes, "We interview so many wankers who came in like want to be DJs and just need to write commercials." But they were fun, and it was a great time. So I did that, and I did that really well, actually. Again, it was the writing really sort of struck me, and I felt I could do it really, really, I wouldn't say easily, but it came easily to me in terms of, the ideas, and then we'd hone it and stuff. Did a bit of on-air stuff as a, radio presenting, being a DJ, for want of a better phrase. Then worked my way into radio management, because I thought there's a ceiling in the radio ads, but actually I'd really like to see if I can, get higher up in the programming side, because all the programmers seem to have all the fun jobs and they got more money and gigs and all this kind of stuff. So I eventually got myself into management, which then brought me to the Northeast, then over to Australia for 4 years. And then when I came back, and the 4 years in Australia was amazing, but it was really hard work. It wasn't like flip-flops and sandals and, kind of chilling out. It was really,
It's Australia off.
Yeah, so well, you can go north or you can go west, but if you're in Sydney and Melbourne, it's pretty hardcore, full on. It's a big business over there, lots of money in it. And so I did that, and I eventually came back to the UK when me and Kim came back for family reasons. Felt like it was the right time as well. And I'd got a job working in Sheffield, running one station, Hallam FM, and then that turned into 3 stations across Yorkshire, Leeds and Hull. And then 14 months later, I was promoted to Group Content Director, which at the time was about, if you take into account digital and FM stations, was probably, I don't know, about 30, 40 stations. Then we bought more stations, and in the end, by the time I left, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think if you count the FMs and the digitals, 50-odd radio stations and 250 people working under my responsibility, some freelance, some staff, and a budget of about £10 million a year. And, that was kind of the pinnacle of my corporate success, if you like. But by the time I got there, I'd kind of had enough.
Did you? I'd worked corporate side in my last job as sales director before I set this up, and like it just, I was at that get to the point where the usual working ridiculous hours, the hierarchy, everything that comes with it, and the burnout, and just that was and quite a low point. And then I'd lost my dad and made the decision to set this business up. So like I think sometimes there's got to be certain trigger points throughout what sounds like your career as well, where you've gone, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
Very much. The move back from Australia was inspired by my brother and his wife were having their first baby. A lot of my pals were having kids, and we felt like we were missing out on that. Plus our parents, my parents in particular, were getting a bit older. When I eventually got to the point where I asked for redundancy from corporate, my son was born in the November of 2017, and that was a massive life-changing experience for all the reasons everybody knows about who's got kids, but also for me, someone who was on the road at 6:15 in the morning and not getting home till 8 o'clock at night. I've got this lovely little bundle. All I've got is videos his man sending me of him, gurgling away and having his nappy change. I'm like, I'm missing all of this. But at that point, he wasn't enough for me to go, I need to get out. But about 6 months later, my dad was really poorly and eventually did die. Not long after, we were given 12 months, and it was probably only about 4 weeks after that. And I spent a lot of time in hospital over that 4 weeks, and at one point in a home with him, a respite home. And I was just like, my dad worked away a lot when I was a kid. He worked in London 5 days a week for most of my childhood. So I didn't really have a great relationship with him until he came home, and he couldn't speak to kids. He could speak to me as an adult. So we got on great as adults, but as kids, he's just no use at all. Which is, it comes down his own upbringing. We could be here all day going through the generations of what's brought it through. But for me, I just looked at it and thought, I'm doing exactly the same thing. Vaughan, my son, is going to grow up with a dad he doesn't really know. And we might have nice flash holidays. I can take him on 4 weeks of the year. They're amazing. But all he really wants is his dad there at the parents' evening. And now I walk him to school every morning, and, I pick him up fair few nights, and me and my wife split it up between us. But that was the real thing when there was some changes came about within the business around about, I think it was April time of 2018. And my role was changing, and I looked at the way it was changing and just thought, there's an opportunity here. Rather than just go with this, is this the time I can just say, because I knew the rules, I knew the law. I was like, this is changing enough. Can I ask for this for not to carry on? And they were like, was that what you want? I was like, well, I'd like to at least think about it. And a month later, I walked away, because it just felt like terrifying, scariest thing I've ever done in my life, And sometimes in the last few years, I felt like the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. God, it's been days I've just sat there going, what the fuck did I do that for? But actually, this morning, walking Vaughan to school, giving him a cuddle, and then just walking back up the road, I'm like, it doesn't get any better, Love it.
So you've got that balance, like you're not missing out on them memories. A big key part of your children's life.
Yeah, and he's growing up so fast. I mean, it's like, I look at videos of him and I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
I know parents say this, it's like, slow down. But he's just like, boom, boom, boom. And yeah, I just love it. I'm there this morning. I was doing some writing this morning. I got really early. Oh, not really early. It was probably early enough. I was at my desk at 6, because sometimes I start at like 5. If I'm really busy, I'll be like, get at the desk. But I got at 6, and I hear him come down the stairs at 10 to 7. and it's just, he sits on my knee and we have a cuddle. He then sits in the chair I've got in my office, which is my dad's old chair, sits on his iPad, and I'll do a bit more work. I'm not rushing out the door like with a piece of toast in my gob and, like a cup of coffee. It's like, see you later. It's like, well, get him ready, and then we walk to school. And, we were doing the rainbow car lookout this morning, walking down. Let's see if we can find all the colours of the rainbow. There's an argument about what colours are in the rainbow.
Yeah.
But, he got them all. He got all the primary colours he found, So I just love that. I couldn't change that.
I think there's an interesting thing that probably resonates with a lot of blokes our age, potentially, where we've had a particular kind of dad who's come up through a certain era. And my dad, Irish, very much the quiet, you saying out, you keep it to yourself, you don't share anything, you're the strong man, all of that kind of thing. Never had a relationship with him until I became an adult, ironically.
Yeah.
And, he ended up passing away. We had a kind of relationship, but we just didn't have it, And I remember going for a walk with my son Thomas when he was like about 7, 8, and he was asking about his granddad, and I was kind of saying, well, we never really speak. He's down Norfolk way and all that. And there was something where I think this is where it kind of makes you realise this is more than just a choice of a career or a status or whatever. He just said, I don't know how you do that, Dad, because you're my best friend. And I was like, do you know those moments? We've had our ups and downs since, but we still have a good relationship. But it was that point where you just think, this moment here is what it's about. And how many of us can get lost in this chasing of something because we feel as if we should or have to, or as a bloke we have to provide all of these things that perhaps lay us from previous generations. It's such a big thing to think about, isn't it?
It was. My dad was very much provide, and when you think about his childhood, my granddad worked in the UK as a postman. My dad was brought up in Dublin, and the house was so small that him and his brother had to sleep in the house opposite, because we went after he died. Me and my brother went back and found the house, and we were talking about it. So, and so his dad was here 50 weeks of the year, and he only saw his dad 2 weeks of the year. So he never, and when he came home, his dad went to mass every day. So he hardly ever saw him. And what makes me laugh is there's a year between my dad his 2 sisters and his brother, and it's literally every time your granddad came back, he had another kid. So, and that was his upbringing. So for him, it was like, for me to win at being a dad, it's to be a provider, and I can do this by going away, because I can make more money away than I can in London than I can in Yorkshire.
So on that note, you said terrified. There's a big decision there, and in your heart you probably know what's the right one, but you're still stepping away from something that's providing. What was that journey like?
Oh, it was. I remember that after having the meeting with my boss, going outside ringing Kim, and I was in Leeds. It was a really sunny day. I stood outside Yorkshire TV, because the station's next to Yorkshire TV, or I call it Yorkshire TV, ITV now. And I rang her, and her dad was really poorly at the time, so we had a lot of stress in the family as well. And despite all that, when I was thinking, this is the worst news I can give her, that I'm thinking about walking away, and she just went, do it. And she was working for the same company at the time. She's just like, do it. You're really unhappy now. You're missing Vaughan so much. It's time to bet on yourself, really. So that was excitement. And then over that, I think I had 2 or 3 weeks of I had about 5 days to decide exactly what I wanted to do before I had to give them an answer on whether I would take the new role within the business or whether I was going to take the redundancy. And I was like, what do I do? And I remember the day before before I had to give them the decision, we went for a long walk with Vaughan in the pram, and I just felt so sick. We got some lunch. I couldn't eat any of it. I was just like, God, I don't know what to do. And we sat down and went through the list of all the reasons to stay and all the reasons to go. And there were more reasons to go, but the reasons to stay were the ones that the mortgage. I have a big house, which I'd got in corporate land, and it was all lovely. There's a big mortgage on it, and at the time that was all great. But when you're taking that on without the safety net, it's like, that's a lot of money to find every month, and everything else that goes with running a house. And it's like, well, what we're going to do for money? I mean, it's there was no real jobs outside of what I was. Outside of the company I was in, the kind of job, the level I'd got to, they were all kind of taken, and they were sort of safe seats, if you like. There weren't places I could go, well, they're gagging for me, I'll go over there. But if I did, I'd just be doing the same thing anyway. So it was like the book was sitting in the background, the first one, Media Monster. I was like, why don't I see if I can do that? You know, maybe this is a seminal moment in my life where I'm given an opportunity. The door is opening, opportunity's knocking, and I'm just going to walk through it, write a book, and then before you know it, I'll be loaded. I'll be like your next James Patterson, and this will all be work for it. You know, that's the dream. And so that was kind of I made the decision. Yes, I'm going to do it wholeheartedly with abject fear pouring out of me as and I even remember the meeting because I had to the next day I had to tell them I didn't meet till 4, and I just walked around the block constantly through the day on the phone to people. I wasn't doing any work at that point because I knew I was going. There was no point. I didn't have any meetings. My PA Deb, who I was really close to, knew what was going on. So she's like, I've cleared your diary. Just do what you need to do. It was really sunny. I just walked around Castlefield in Manchester, ringing my sister, ringing my brother, you know, ringing Kim, trying to get my head around the fact I wasn't going to bottle it and say, yes, I'll stick with the job. And in the end, it was like, you know, it's like, well, what are you going to do? And they were all expecting me to stay. I like, my hand was shaking and my throat, everything. I was like, no, I'm going. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm going. And, you know, it was just, I don't think I even really gave them the truth behind it. I think I just said, oh, you know, my dad's poorly, or my dad passing away, all that. I think I was just, you know, didn't want them to feel bad. I was like, don't feel bad that I'm leaving. I think it's, you know, it's all for the right. It was like, literally, I need to do this. I need to do it. But I didn't have the confidence to tell them that at the moment, funnily enough. It was just like, there was all the other reasons I was going rather than, I'm doing this because I really want to bet on myself. I want to go for this. And I really want to, again, it's that thing, I want to prove that I can do this.
I think there'll be a lot of guys in the same position where, you know, we've all got financial needs, but very unhappy in jobs and careers, whatever that is, and just won't make the changes. So, you know, I think about that and how much mental strain that must put on people to think, I'm just going to stick in the same job because I can't see a way out. And I think with many things, there always is ways out. You know, it's really, it's looking at other opportunities in the way you have taken some time, you know, what do I do here? And taking the plunge.
Yeah, it is. I hear that a lot. You know, I still do some coaching outside of the book writing, and there's, you know, I work with entrepreneurs who have kind of like, a lot of people have had, you know, I was talking to my cleaner the other day. I didn't know her background. You know, she's just like, I used to have a really high-powered job in HR, but I became a single parent. I was like, I can't be doing that anymore. I'm going to do this. And she's got like this empire that she's built of things that she does that she loves to do and, you know, give her great satisfaction, but massive amounts of flexibility. And I think, you know, if you'd said to her probably 2 years in the HR job when she's on good money and doing really well, she'd probably just be like, no, I can't do this. You know, why would I do that? But actually, need sort of necessitates that change. And I feel for people who are stuck and don't know where to go, because I think that must be the most terrifying thing. At least you've got a germ of something that you can do. Yeah. That's got to be pretty exciting.
I think the knock-on effect will be your relationships and yourself, you know, around your friends, your family and everything. When you're stuck like that and you feel as though you've got nowhere to go, it must be horrific.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You said something about there's been times when you thought it was a stupid decision in the past. Yeah. I guess they're the tough times in the choice you've made. But where do you think you'd be if it stayed?
It's a good question to think about this a little bit. It's kind of, so when I came back from Australia, because what I was doing over in there, it was, you know, it was very well thought of. I had a lot of skills, and I ended up getting a job in the Northern network for the company I worked for. I often wonder if I'd gone to London to one of the stations, if the opportunity had arisen, I'd gone into London, would I have stayed? You know, and sort of got locked into that whole London lifestyle. I don't know. I mean, if I'd stayed in the job I was doing, the company's changed a lot in the last 5 years since I left. Or was it 6 years? I can't remember now. It must be 5, I think. And so there probably would have been opportunities that would have been suitable for me, and I probably would have quite enjoyed. But I think the most terrifying thing is in that period of getting there, I would have just been doing the long journeys. Probably prior to COVID, before, you know, remote working became a thing, I was on the road constantly, you know, and even in the new role they were offering me, there was still a fair bit of travel in it. So I think where I would have been is probably just I would have got into a routine of seeing Vaughan enough was enough. I probably would have convinced myself that's enough, and we've got money for nice holidays and treats and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's probably would have been. But I guarantee that I'd still be writing the book in the background and probably be still trying to sell it to somebody, because that was always the dream. That was the dream before I went to Australia. Was to write. Sitting in Spain at my wife's dad's apartment that he had out there, and just looking out at the sunshine, just think, God, it'd be ace just to write and be able to just, because everyone has this vision of writers sitting on a balcony somewhere hot, just writing away, or some log cabin. And that mine was no different. I mean, I write in my office in Shotley Bridge, in my office in the house. But you have this image of I can just go anywhere I want. I've got this incredible freedom, this incredible flexibility in life. And I think that's what I really want out of life, is just freedom of choice, and that would have always been in the back of my mind. So I'd have been plugging away. Yeah. I don't think I could have. I don't know. It's one of those things where I think there's a tipping point sometimes where you think, am I too old to move now? Am I too old? Is there too much at stake now? Because, Vaughan needs X, Y, Z for school, and starting a business, is the writing going to work? Would that have kept me locked in? I'd have been frustrated. I know that. Yeah, definitely.
I'm really interested to understand how you stay disciplined enough to keep on writing. I know to be able to sit down and go, right, I've finished that book and I'm on to the next one. And that in my opinion, looking at it, that takes some discipline to do that, knowing that you've got to write that next book.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Is it self-motivation again? Is it going back? Is it just knowing that this is just what I need to do?
There's a few things. I mean, there's definitely a self-motivation. There's a drive. There's a need to, because the more books you have, the more books you sell, and they read one, they read the next, and because mine are a series, the read-through of mine I think is about 75%, which I'm told is very high. So you want to keep the list. You want to keep those key listeners. You want to keep the readers. It's my old ears there. You want to keep the readers going for the next one. So I'm constantly looking to try and create the next story. And I get excited about them as well. I worry the readers will forget about me. I don't want them to. It's like, keep reading. But there's also a process. So when I wrote, famously, I always say it took me 10 years to write the first book, because I was doing it in and around my corporate job. And the second book took 10 weeks, and that's 10 weeks of sitting down and writing the start to the end. But when I first got together with my publishers, they said to me, how many books can you get out a year? And I was like, well, probably one. And they were like, well, we probably need more. And I was like, more books than that? I mean, it took me 10 years. And they were like, look, we're going to show you a method. And this is what people now call, it's based on the writer's room and now the American TV sort of process, where you get people in a room and you work on crafting a story, as we would now, to try and get all the holes out as quickly as possible. So when you sit down to write it, you've got like a story, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So they showed me how to do that, and then I sort of developed it a little bit more myself, and then I got a little bit more detailed. And I now, when I sit down to write a book, I have every single chapter planned out. So I write the book in chapters, and then I write the book. So that probably takes about a month. I'm just at the end, or towards the end of planning the 11th in the series now, Deadly Inferno. And that's about a month to 6 weeks. It's been a bit longer this time because obviously, we had a recent bereavement. So that has kind of knocked me a little bit off my usual course. But even then, I've been giving myself a hard time for not, even in the most horrific of times, writing this bloody book and writing the next one. So I do, when I sit down, I'm really determined that once I start the book, and my goal is to try and get 2 chapters a day written, which is about 2,500 words in total. And to try and get that done, if I do that, I have about 50 chapters a book. I can do it in about 5 weeks. It hasn't worked out like that more recently. It's been about 7 or 8 weeks. Then there's the read through off the back of it. Then it goes to this development team. They'll have a look at it. They'll kick it back to me with a few changes. I'll tidy up. Then it goes into the editing process and comes back with anything that's kind of majorly problematic. But by then, it's been through that many filters. It's not. So there's never any problems with it. A few little tweaks here and there. But yeah, it's it's a combination of many things, but years of experience as well, I think.
Just and related to that as well, like where do your ideas come from? do you go to certain places? Do you see things? Do you read things? Where do the ideas come from?
It's weird, it's like little conversations about things, driving things jump into your head. A lot of the times, I mean, because mine are police procedurals and crime fiction, I can take inspiration from true crime. One of my books, Deadly Obsession, is actually, it's based on a character who is, for many reasons, again, actually, a horrific childhood. He is obsessed with emulating the UK's greatest serial killers. He's got a point to prove that he's as good as those serial killers. And when you read the story, it makes sense as to why he wants to do that. So he emulates. And in this one, I chose a number of, I won't say who they are, too many of them. There's one in there, which is obviously Peter Sutcliffe, because I'm from Huddersfield and I grew up in the shadow of that while that was kind of kicking off, or was rolling on, should I say, because it went on forever. But there's a number of serial killers in there, and I had to research them, and that came from just, I'd always had that in my head, but I'll look at true crime stuff and you'll see something, you think, oh God, that's an interesting thought. And obviously I'm not going to replicate a episode of 24 Hours in Police Custody, but there might be something in it where, my last book was called Deadly Veil, or it's called Deadly Veil. And the original idea for that had come from me watching Inspector Morse, the younger version. It escapes me now. Endeavour.
Yeah.
So I'm watching Endeavour, and there's a bit where they go into this house and there's some masks. This guy's he does prosthetic teeth fixing or something like that. And there's like these masks on the wall, and I was like, oh God, it'd be cool, weird if like a guy wearing a mask of his previous victim killed someone and was caught on CCTV. So the previous victim kills the next victim. I thought, this is amazing. And I was like, so good. It wasn't, I could make it work. I could not get the motivation for the guy doing it in the first place. And that I remember that was, and it ended up being totally different. The veil sticks, and there's a reason for that when you read the book. But Jesus, I went around the houses for about 4 weeks on that with my development director, talking to her backwards and forwards, and I said, about this? She's like, no, I don't think that works either. And sometimes you've just got to go, as much as I love the idea, I can't make it plausible that anybody on the planet would want to do that or why they would want to do it. And, you can write any old story, but for me, it's got to be rooted in, there's a real life motivation. And it kind of goes back to my own experiences. There's a thread that takes you to the starting point.
That's interesting. When you ask about the ideas thing and what you just said there, just kind of thinks, what's it like to be in your head when you're creating?
Funny, my wife's friends, I remember one will come up to her, she just goes, I don't know if I should be in the same room as you on my own. And I'm like, I'm not dangerous.
I mean, like, I'm researching the serial killers, but I'm not one.
Yeah. So did see my Google search. It's incredible. Seriously, on the text message, I've got a friend who does some support with me around law. She's a former Crown prosecutor, and the stuff I send her going, if someone wants to do this, this, and this, she's like, and she comes straight back. And we always laugh and say, God, if anybody reads these, she says, well, at least you've got the books you could point in the direction of, rather than the garden that's been recently turned.
It's interesting, isn't it, that creativity with the discipline and building that up over time. And I think for me, it's, do you sometimes get overwhelmed with the thought of, I've written this many books and I know I want to carry it on, and feeling like, what if the ideas don't come, or I don't know, something like that? Do you ever get that?
All the time, yeah. I've got a little, I've got my phone in the notes. I'll come up with an idea, I'll just flick it down, and every now and again I'll get to the point where I'll go, I've got loads, and I go, oh no, that's Deadly Obsession, that's Deadly Veil, that's that, right? Oh God, I've written that one. So I'll start to feel like I'm running out, and there's always something that will jump into my head and go, oh, that could work. I'm at with the latest one, Inferno. There's a couple of threads that I've been running through the books that will hopefully sort of like come to a crescendo in this one,
right.
And that's quite scary, but I think necessary, because I think we've got to do something to keep it fresh and exciting, and kind of introduce you know, some new blood into the space. I won't say who it is, but it needs, definitely, I think needs it, because otherwise you just end up with the same old. And I think the greatest you know, stories and series, they freshen things up. Sometimes when you least expect it, you're like, wow. I mean, look, Game of Thrones is a prime example.
Yeah,
you know, no spoilers, but you know, if you've not seen it, don't spend too much time getting used to Sean Bean. That's right. You know, you're just like, oh, okay, right. You know, so I'm quite with the guts to do that, but I certainly feel it needs to sort of freshen up. But you do definitely get to that space where you're like, and that's where the first chapter comes from, that whole thing of, can I make this one, the prose, as good as the last one? You know, terrifying.
Which brings it, you know, you talk about characters. You've got the DCI, Jane Phillips,
Yeah.
who I think that you've got the stories and the plots that are really, really gripping, but you've also got the characters that you see through. And, you know, I guess background policing, almost kind of visualizing that incident room and the characters in there, and you get familiar with them, comfortable with them in a good way. That to me is a big draw as well when you're reading sort of serials like that.
Yeah, I have the feedback I get on the characters is amazing. The favourite one by far is Bovolino, who is like this enormous kind of big Italian, which is quite unusual for an Italian, you know, but he's a man mountain. And the great irony is that the real Bovolino, the guy I based the name on, is a guy called Joe Bovolino, who looks like Mussolini and is about 5 foot tall in Australia. So I got this tiny little fella create this big, you know, monster of a man. And the other week I was I was picking up Vaughan from school, and one of the mums came up to me, because it's sort of to filter through to the mums that, oh, Vaughan's dad's an author, and they only read your books, and my wife's great, telling everyone, oh, you should try these. And one of the mums came up and she just went, I almost texted you the other night, and I was like, really? She goes, I thought you'd killed Bov off, and if we killed Bov off, and I was just like, and the amount of times on that particular book, so many people said, I thought you killed him, I was going to kill you. And they're so attached to him, and I'm like, that's amazing for me, because I wrote a team that I'd want to be part of. Jane is loosely based on my I don't know, my values and who I am as a person, and if I was running a team, how I'd like to run it with my close-knit team. And I'm sure people in my career would say, well, what a bollocks, you're an arsehole. Fair enough, I probably was to you, because you probably weren't very good. But those that I rated, you know, I really enjoyed working with. I would do anything I could to support them and to get the best for them. And she's like that, and I love that about her. And I love the rest of the team around her, that sort of balance. And I think, you know, I just try to, I love the fact people get so invested in her and the team and that space, and it keeps coming through. Even on the latest one, it's like, I love these characters. It's like being back with the team, back with the old friends. I'm in the investigation with them, following them through. And as a non-copper, no, you know, I've got no background in the policing whatsoever. That's a real compliment to me that I've managed to capture that. You know?
Can I just ask a question to know about characters? Paperback or Kindle?
In terms of the best one to buy or
To read.
to read?
What do you prefer?
What do I prefer?
Yeah.
Oh, good question. I think paperback, which is kind of counterintuitive, because most of my readers find me on Kindle. Particularly Kindle Unlimited is massively popular. So, you know, they pay a small fee, they read whatever they like, and my books are in there. And to be fair, the majority of my revenue comes from, a large portion of my revenue comes from Kindle, very little from paperback. But I guess because we sell solely through Amazon, maybe if we'd gone down the traditional route, that might be different. But for me, I love a paperback. I'm not a fan of hardbacks with the covers that come off. They drive me insane. You know, that's just a, you know, I'm quite lazy with that sort of thing. But yeah, I think there's something about holding it. And as a writer, as an author, when you get your first cover and you look at it and you go, can't believe this. You know, it's not quite the same when you hold the Kindle up, you know. But
what about yourself, Dave?
I suppose Kindle's become the convenient, but I'm with you on the book. I love a hardback, but I am the same with the dust covers. And I remember as a kid, kind of recalling the kid, I collected the Lord of the Rings series of all the books. And I remember, and I regret it, taking off the dust covers and ripping up and chucking them away. And it was one of those things where later on you realise what you've done. But the physical book, and a good paperback, because you can kind of go back, and for depending on whether it's fiction or fact, you can make a couple of notes in as well. So I don't like that.
It took me years to read books, and once I got a Kindle, every night I read every single night now and on holidays. So for me, it's helped us start to read.
Yeah.
But I know there's, I can completely understand from your side as an author. But for me, it was just now, it's like podcast, the amount I absorb every day, or how much I read every day now too.
I'm very grateful for Kindle. What they've done for particularly indie authors. I know I'm not an indie author so much as those that self-publish, but for the digital publishing world and those that it has absolutely just changed the world completely. It's incredible.
Yeah. Do you know, you just sort of taking a step back and ask that question about where do you think you'd be? There's a phrase that kind of popped into my head of like the curse of okay. And you've been talking about your books, and it's been like your face is like, we're lighting up with you, we're kind of in it with you and excited, versus I'd have been all right, I'd probably been chipping away. And I think this is a real challenge, isn't it, for many of us who are feeling trapped and stuck, just don't know whether they can or can't. And it might be okay, there's a grind and a psychological weight to it, but it's okay, versus what could be. And
it's funny because there's the thing that I got really high in my career in radio. One of the job I had, I was running the content side of Europe's biggest radio network. I mean, that's a pretty big thing. Commercial radio network. I think Radio 2 is probably bigger than anything you could get, or certainly the network, whether it was bigger than Radio 2. But it was a bloody great big job. And I'd never intended, and even when the job was advertised, the group content director, I remember saying to my boss at the time, no way they would do that, not a chance. And I was persuaded over time that you should do this. Then it kicks into, well, I need to prove I can do it. Why wouldn't I do that? If they're going for it, then I should be going for it. I'm going to do it. And I managed to get to a super high level based on the fact I was determined and I wanted to get the best result I possibly could. I wouldn't say I really enjoyed the job. It wasn't a passion. My passion was getting the best bloody result I possibly could. To do that to my bosses that were going, we need more money, we need more audience, we need X, Y, Z. All right, well, I'll fucking go and get them for you then, won't I? And I went out and built the team I possibly could. I wanted to do the best job, and I always have, whatever I do, I want to do the best job I can at it. I wouldn't say I got up every morning and went, can't wait to get into work.
I get this completely, because when I think back throughout my sales career, I was a process engineer up until 29 and promoted at 29, moved into management. And I moved up and up and up until I got the sales director. Would I say I really loved? I loved it in parts, but I moved around different companies and everything. But I was just determined, and I knew what I wanted to do in my career at that level. And then when you peak, it's kind of like, okay, I'm there now. Well, what do I do now? So like when you peak at that point, and you're not loving something, you move to another company. Okay, I might spend another year. That might spend 2 years, but you're not fulfilling the passion, like you just said there before. Your face lights up. It's like when I talk about fashion and clothes, that's what I'm flipping. Not selling, and no disrespect to one of my past employees, bursting discs in factories. When I talk about fashion, clothes, and confidence, and how people feel when they've got a great outfit on, you can see that obviously with you being an author.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's just that's the bit as I always wanted to do since I was a kid. Just write, tell stories, or draw. Create something that shared how I was feeling, and I guess that's one of the things. When I was in the broadcasting world, you're so far removed from the actual stuff that's going out through the speakers. You're setting directives and trying to manage the business side of things, but you're not really creating anything. You're managing people doing the creation, and the creative people right at the end of the thing. And they used to win loads of awards. You can't take credit for that. You're like, oh yeah, we're award winners. You're like, I didn't know what to do with that. I managed to sign off on the budget that got that promotion through. That did that. That's probably it. And that's the bit for me is I was always very creative, and I think the higher you go, people, I'm sure they can reflect with this. The most fun you probably had in your work is when you were, for me, was when I was in radio, was writing ads, because I was just having fun. What can we do here? What can we make? What sound can we make? What voice can we do? Which actor could we get to do this for us? Versus, we need to, strip off 5% in cost this month, or We're not going to hit quarter 4. What can we do? What can we implement to try and drive revenues in the last quarter? And you're like, it just doesn't have the same sort of connection at all.
Yeah, I resonate. And I think I often have the conversation with friends from the police, like some have gone up further ranks than I did. But I remember thinking the best job I had was at that sergeant level where you could support your team and just get involved. The higher bits was just detach. Not that I got that high because I deliberately chose to step off, but I was never passionate about the job. But even so, being involved, being closer to what it's all about, I think is where the real enjoyment can come from,
Totally. I mean, I look at, because of the background of the books, I watch conferences and, when you're watching like someone super high up in the Met Police or whatever, and they're doing a press conference about, the way the business, the organisation, hasn't delivered in the way it should, or there's been X, Y, Z, and then all the recently publicised problems. I look at that person, I think, is that why you got into the police in the first place? Or have you just been carried away by this wave of, promotion and almost maybe like me, and just like I've got to do the next job as best I can. You do that really well. Well, you should do the next job, and you're like, oh, fuck you, all right. And you just end up in a place, and you always stand at the edge of the cliff, going, I've got no clue. I've no idea how I got here. This is 20 years later. What the bloody hell did I do to get here? I walked into an office in Leeds, going, can I write some ads for you? And then I'm sitting there going, I'm the group content director of the fucking Sony Awards of like 200 people. I'm like, how did I go from there to here? And there'll be plenty of people screaming, listening to this now going, we don't know either. Bloody obvious.
But it's right. I remember one inspector telling me, because when I'd said, look, because I was highlight for accelerated promotion, all that, and I'd made a decision early on, it's not for me, it's not what I want. And he kind of smiled and he said, you're right, you either stay on it or you get off. And it's a simple, obvious phrase, but it's true, because you stay off or you deliberately decide to get off.
Yeah.
Stay on, sorry, or deliberately decide to get off. And, there's points, I guess, in career where that can happen. You can make those choices. But if you're not aware, or you're not necessarily tuned into what's really driving you, that, you stay on, don't you?
Yeah, totally. And it's the all the trappings that go with it. Sometimes they'll become like weights around you, because you've got the car payment, you've got the house payment, you've got another car payment. You might have a teenage son who needs a car, school trips, universities. All of that suddenly becomes, you just can't get out, and that's, or you think you can't get out. I think that's the scary bit, is it's like, well, where do you look to get out?
So on that note then, if somebody's sort of sitting in a position where they're on the treadmill or whatever, what advice would you give them? What thoughts would you share from your experiences about, getting off or staying on?
Yeah. Are you happy? You look yourself in the mirror in the morning. Are you doing it because you're enjoying it and you're happy? Are you doing it because you might be quite good at it? And or hopefully you're quite good at it if you're at that level. And you've just got locked into that space. And if you're locked into that space, don't think you can't get out. But to get out, you've probably got to find, and I don't want to get into cliches and metaphors, but you've got to find the key thing that's going to get you out. What is the thing that's going to drive you to step out of that safe, slightly oppressive space at times, and get you through the bumpy bits? Because all three of us have stepped off, but it hasn't been plain sailing, I'm sure. It never is. And I meet clients every week, entrepreneurs who are just like, I feel like I should just go back to work. And I'm like, no. You found your purpose. That is the thing that's really, really resonates with me now, all these years later, is if you can find your purpose in life, if that's corporate and you're doing really well and that's your purpose, and I see people who it is, they absolutely love it, love everything about it, then that's what you're meant to do. That's your mission here. You're here to do something and to help other people do really well. But if your purpose, is not that and it's something else, if you found it, I said this to a client yesterday, if you found it, your business will be successful. It might not be successful in its current guise, but we'll find a way to be successful because it's your purpose and it's the thing you're meant to do. And trust me, it's been up and down like a bloody yo-yo at times. But the one thing I always knew was I was doing something I'm meant to be doing. And I think over the years, it's learning to trust the process and just take your fingers off a little bit and say, do you know what? It will come and you'll find a way. Just something will pop up. It might not look like it. There's been moments where I'm just sat there going, shit, money is seriously running out now. We need to get something through the door. And, you know, I'm like, what happens next? A month later, I get a contract through. Boom. That's it. That's going to sort us out for the rest of the year. Happy days. Not by luck. You know, there's obviously work goes on in the background, but there's also that belief that I'm doing the right thing. And, you know, thankfully, that's not the way it is anymore. But if you can find that key, find that purpose, that will be the thing that will help you get through those lean times. Because there will be lean, without a doubt.
I think there's two words that always stick in my mind, and it's being resilient and being relentless as well. You have to be every day on it. Because if you're going to make this decision, you know, and it is your passion, it's your purpose, you've got to be those two things as well.
Such a good one, just to pick up on that. They're different as well. Because relentless is I mean, they're overlapped, but they are different. You can be resilient, but you still got to push. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. But do you know what? This has been brilliant. Thank you for coming. It's been just a great chat. I hope the listeners have enjoyed it as much as we have. I'm sure they have. It's been brilliant. And so much to share about it. And I guess what we want to do is kind of wrap it up with our usual question, which is, what object or accessory or thing from your past brings you joy? And can you share that with us?
I've got a couple of things I brought with me.
Okay.
And they'll make sense. They're just under the chair.
Right.
Like it, we've got props.
I might have to get off the chair. Go on then. Should have put me good underpants. Right, so I've got a few things here. I didn't think this one through, really. The box are bigger than the underneath. So the first object is this. Now this is my first ever storybook. Right, well, the first one that I've ever really properly kept. And this is a book I wrote in Mrs. Shagula's class. I think I was age 7. And it's basically all these different stories that I wrote.
Oh, wow.
And illustrated. And whenever I do talks about Ryan, I'll read one of the stories out of this. This gets more response than my current books, to be honest. But this is when I really realised that I love to write and I'd say create. So when I look at that, I lost it for many, many years. It was when my dad passed, actually. We were digging out the cellar, clearing stuff out, and we found the box. And I was just like, I had it in my head, I'm sure there's a book somewhere with all this in. And this was it. I mean, I absolutely love it. That was J2R. The next one is my first novel.
Oh, yes.
Self-published. Because when I look at that, it's on my wall in my office. I've got all my covers in frames. And there's two reasons for that. One is to remember what order they're in, but another is to remind myself that I'm an author, that I've done that, you know. And I think there's there's nearly 1 million words on the wall now. Probably actually might be more than that. So I look at that, and this is my boy. This started it all. He opened the door. So this is one I self-published, and led me to Incubator, who then signed me, and we created the Phillips series off the back of it. The next one I have, which any author will tell you is probably the most precious thing, is your first bestseller. So this was Silence. Now, this became a bestseller 3 years after launch, which is unusual. Normally they launch and you get it when they're out, but it climbed. And I wasn't at number 1 for very long with this. I think it was about 24 hours. Then Michael Connolly released his new book, The Bastard. So I just disappeared into number 2 for quite some time. But I was there for that day, and that was enough. So
that's Deadly Silence.
That's Deadly Silence, yeah.
Yes.
And my next one is my second and latest bestseller, Deadly Justice.
Yes.
And I think this one is as precious as this because it proved that it wasn't a fluke. Because the 24 hours, I was like, well, it was only 24 hours. This was at the top of the charts for quite a while, and I fended off some quite big hitters with this one. And it just, it really made me smile to get that. And I remember waking up, my wife was away with Vaughan, they were on holiday somewhere, and I checked for some reason, I got to bed the night before, and it was okay in the chart, and I woke up at 5 a.m, and I was like, don't check it, you've been too keen. I was like, fuck it, check it. And I checked it, and I was number 1 at 5 a.m. I screenshot it like mad. I was taking everything I could on the screen, like sending it to anybody I could possibly think of. Number one. And it was brilliant. It was so exciting. So those are things that they make me smile, and I have all the covers on the wall, and I talk to them every day, and I just say, look, you know, love you.
Gratitude.
Yeah, thank you, because he opened the door, and they just allow me to do what I do, and I'm sure, hopefully it's come across. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, it's a big difference to what I would have been doing. So yeah, and I'm so grateful for that.
And it's awesome because when we asked this question in previous ones, it's been from the past, and the question raised was, what do we have now? And you kind of exemplify exactly that you're keeping these things now as symbols of gratitude, as purpose. So and that's what it's about. It's having these things that are symbolic of where you're at now as well as in the past. So brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I really agree. I consider
really enjoying. Yeah. So good. We to be fair.
You do it again.
Yeah. Thanks very much, and we look forward to seeing the next installment. What's the next one? Remind us of the next title.
It's Deadly Inferno.
Deadly Inferno.
Yeah. The current one, it's only been out about a month. It's called Deadly Veil. But the new one I'm writing will hopefully be out in the new year. Deadly Inferno, and it promises to be a bit of a burning the house down.
Okay, great. And if people want to check you out, the book's out, where's the best place?
Best place to go is Amazon UK or Amazon.com, whichever one you're closest to. If you put in OMJ Ryan, I've got that many now. I will pop up under the search, and you can see the whole series there of 12 books. You can help yourself and see which one. But I would recommend start with Silence and work your way through it. The full benefit of it all.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. It's been brilliant. Cheers.
I hope that you enjoyed the episodes and got something from that. If you did, we would love you to share our podcast.
And if you're not already, subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and a review. That really helps spread the word.
We'd also like to thank our podcast producer, Bernardo, for doing a sensational job.
And thanks to the awesome Logan Nicholson of musicformakers.com for the music for the podcast. Catch you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.